Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the most overrated and underrated brawlers in the meta right now. And I'm mainly doing this because the comments in my tier list, it got to me. The rage bait, I don't even think it's rage bait. It is just pure delusion by quite a few people, and I don't know where it's all coming from. So I'm going to be doing gameplay for the majority of this video, but I just had to highlight for the stats. I don't even want to play this stupid, ugly brawler, but let's get some stats going, guys. So, again, I'm seeing a lot of backlash for some reason. Yes, I don't think I meant to put Gigi right at the bottom. She's not the worst brawler inside of the game, guys. And maybe I've done that for a bit of clickbait on my thumbnail, because a bit of banter, because you guys know I probably overhate Gigi a little bit too much. Of course I do. It's a little bit of fun. But I'm not biased or deluded for thinking that Gigi's an F-tier brawler. She's quite clearly, maximum low D tier. If I'm being... That's not even... The most crazy opinion when you think about it. Some people predict that Bolt and Starnova are going to be one-star brawlers, and then they're actually top 5 brawlers in the game. You know, me personally, just getting the tiniest bit of a difference, it doesn't really... Why does that really matter, guys? Anyways, let's just put some proof in the pudding. So this isn't since the update, but she received no buffs, by the way. I mean, yes, some people might be saying, oh, well, Meg, 8-bit, and Max are meta, so that makes Gigi better. No, it doesn't, because Meg has insane survivability. Gigi's not going to be killing a Meg anytime soon. Max has 2 dashes, so it can easily get away from Gigi. And then you got 8-bit. Bro, I have shredded so many Gigis with 8-bit. She don't even get close to 8-bit. So, yeah, I don't know where this delusion's coming from. Gigi needs, a squishy brawler to face off against. And again, some people are coping because maybe I did a few funny games on stream just messing around with Gigi. But, that doesn't... Just because I can't play Gigi that well doesn't mean that that's the reason why I think she's bad. I have data to back it up. I'm not that deluded. I'm not that... Anyways, let's look. I'll put a link to the websites in the description. So what I actually did was I went through every single monthly final, and I don't think there was a single region, even South America. Yeah, I even went to the depths of hell to look to see whether they used GG. I think they might have. I can't recall every single game possible. I don't think they did in South America. They definitely didn't in EU, definitely didn't in NA, and I don't think they did in APAC either throughout all the monthly finals, guys. So she wasn't picked there. In scrims, I think this is over the last, I would say, couple of months, so it's not incorporated the new meta. But look at this, 36 picks, and this is still including today's data. 36 picks in whole. She's 91 out of all the brawlers. That's just insane to me. So how are people coping saying that Gigi's a stronger brawler? I don't know where this is really coming from. And then I thought, okay, so maybe the players that are, they're not, at pro level or even a masters level, for example. Brawlers differ in strength depending on where you're on the meta. And of course, I've always spoke about that on the channel. So, okay, I've gone on to Mythic. That's where some of you guys probably are, right? Yeah, you guys are in Mythic. I've gone to Mythic. And I looked at the meta score, or even just win rate. So you have to scroll all the way down here, and then you get to GG at 88. So I'm thinking, well, if people are screaming this loudly, surely she's insane in the meta. No, she's 88 out of all of these brawlers in terms of the meta score. Only just above 50% average win rate, which is okay considering a lot of these brawlers are below 50. So yeah, if you take a look at the win rate here, which is quite actually high in terms of overall win rate, but that's still 40. That's in Mythic, bro. I could be playing a power 7 Colt in Mythic and I'll be winning every game at that point. But anyways, moving on to this one right here, which is Legendary. Let's take a look at her win rate in Legendary, and I still don't think it's all that high. So I'm still scrolling. So it's even lower in Legendary. So as players get a bit better, she's getting even lower in the rankings. And then, I mean, I've not even had a look in Masters. I don't think this is going to be any better in Masters, I presume. So, again, you take a look at Gigi. Again, have I missed her completely? Oh, she's 80th. So, lo and behold, once people start getting brain cells and know how to face off against this brawler, don't shoot her. Or even, most of the time, I don't even care too much about shooting her because she doesn't actually have that much power. And then, like I said, in scrims, she's just not being picked whatsoever. So, I don't understand where this is coming from. She's got to be one of the most overrated brawlers in the game. Again, maybe I'm a tiny bit harsh upon her in F tier, but she's not anything crazy. She's a very, very, very niche brawler, and she's still at the point of being so niche, she isn't being played in monthly qualifiers, in pro tournaments whatsoever. So I don't get where it's coming. I know CZ Gusta, it's I don't know. He likes GG, he thinks she's good, and yeah, maybe can be underrated in ranked in particular, but I mean, honestly, I could make any brawler look good in ranked. I could make Jessie good in ranked, or Grom, for example. So maybe I need to start doing that. Now I'm moving into the next brawler on the overrated list, and this is me myself thinking that I overrated Gus a little bit here. It's not anything crazy. I just think in terms, like, people aren't talking about just how much he's really fallen off. Again, he's not like terrible, but he's not been played at all recently in EMEA scrims, so EU scrims. Just goes to show that I think there's just so many better options in the meta. I think he's been... Power creeps is probably the biggest, but I know a lot of people spew out that word, but I think this is like the greatest example of it, because fundamentally you wouldn't think Gus is a horrible brawler, but there's just so many better meta brawlers inside of Bounty right now. And even, you know, when the pros have 10 bans, for example, there's way better options than Gus. So I think, again, like, once Wendy gets released, Gus will be even worse, even slipping towards the D tier. So he's really not that good anymore. Another brawler who I believe is very overrated has to be Leon. So Leon already, I think, in the previous meta was pretty overrated. Yes, there was some good synergies and some good maps like Whole Punt, where you could place Leon and have his lollipop drop gadget, and it would be really hard to detect, you know, where him and his team are. But outside of that, and especially since the nerf, he's just even worse. I think he's really fallen off, because pros know how to play against Leon. Like, again, firsthand, after playing a few Matcharinos, it's impossible near enough, unless you literally the most go-to Leon in the world, to really isolate one player and get a kill. Most of the time in Bounty and Knockout, where you see Leon, you're going to get traded out pretty much all of the time because of that health nerf he received a couple of updates ago. So yeah, I think time will tell easily. I think he's dropped off even more than B tier. The next brawler who I believe has fell off a lot, well, very overrated, it is Sirius. So right now there is another bug. There's so many brawlers that have bugs, by the way. I saw like Ali has a bug. There's a lot of brawlers, so technically they could be overrated with these bugs, but I think even without the bug, Sirius wasn't really being played all too much in scrims. Whenever I watched him being played, well, another pro would just go Barley. That was even before the buff, or even like a Berry, or just any other thrower to counter out the Sirius. Sirius is only really good into tanks, but ever since Frank and Bull, maybe a few other tanks, just got those nerfs, he just became way worse. It's a lot harder for Sirius to farm from an assassin, for example. Yes, he can farm from assassins, but eventually they will get on top of you. Tanks find it more difficult, finding and creating that space to take down Sirius. So yeah, I think now that people have discovered a good counter to Sirius with penny throwers, he's just not that good anymore. But last brawler I want to put in the overrated list isn't anything crazy, so I always go through with Ruffs. Like, sometimes he's underrated, sometimes he's overrated, but I think right now he is overrated, specifically for pros. I think for the majority of people watching, you guys are probably underrating him because he's one of the least played brawlers in the game. But in pro play, I've been thinking for a long time, especially after pushing a lot of rank last season. Every time I went Ruffs, this is probably with less bans, though. Pros have more bans, so they can play towards Ruffs a little bit better. I was like, every time I'm playing Ruffs, I'm just getting countered. Like, he's so squishy. Yes, he can feed a hypercharge super to your teammate, but there's hardly a chance in most situations. Yes, maybe like open business and maybe another hot zone map he's still very strong in. But outside of that, I don't know, like, there's like Edgar, Mortis, there's so many high health brawlers at the top of the meta now as well that can just delete Ruffs. Again, yes, he can eventually open up the map, but I just think it's not worth the reward anymore because you're constantly getting countered by the opponents. You're just a sitting duck. So now we're going to be moving on to your underrated brawlers, starting off with my favorite, most underrated brawler in the game right now has to be Glowy. So Glowy hasn't received any buffs, and this is even from the previous meta. I think it's definitely going under the radar, and now I think people will start to see Glowy's full potential because, again, some people were putting Glowy at F tier after his range nerf, and that was incredible. I think I must have put him in C tier. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he was like C tier after the range nerf, and that, well, no, after the buff, sorry. The buff where it's like in between the nerf and the buff. So I put him in like C tier, thought he'd be improving in the meta, but now the pros are really liking him because you pair it with like a Griff, a Colt, any wall break, or just any map that is pretty open. Glober is just insane. Hot zone, he's very good in. Heist, he's very strong in. Knockout and Bounty, he pairs well with so many different brawlers. You guys have got to try him out a little bit more. He's a brawler that, of course, requires good synergy, and you've got to pocket heal someone most of the time. He's such a good brawler because there's only a handful of counters really to him, like Crow, maybe Penny to stop the grouping up, but still a good Glober. Just take over the game. The next brawler who I believe is very underrated right now is Pearl. So Pearl is always like the definition of slept on when she is meta, because there was a very long time where she was B tier, A tier in the meta, and most people didn't really come to that conclusion, like most casuals. But right now she's in a very underrated period because they did another buff to her. They keep buffing her, and over time goes on, you know, eventually these buffs are going to catch up and it's going to make her very strong. Right now she's very good. So the way I feel like Pearl is strong, she's good in knockout and bounty. Like you've seen it out in the open. Pros were playing Pearl pretty much every single time last monthly finals. She's received another buff. I'm seeing a lot more pros play Pearl and have a really good win rate with her. And it's the fact that you can now play Pearl outside of bounty and knockout. You can play her in gem grab again. You can play her in these weirder situations where she was strong in like a year ago. So definitely underrated. The next brawler who I think is so underrated in the meta has to be Kit. So you guys probably hear me talk about how strong I think Kit is for a little while, but I still think Kit's underrated. I still really think, because me personally, I would have nerfed Kit a couple of times in the last balance changes. Yes, there are so many more buffy brawlers now that are definitely a higher priority, but once those brawlers are nerfed, Kit will be a big problem again. So one thing I just really don't like facing off against is Kit and gem grab. I just think eventually as the game goes on with the invisibility gadget, eventually Kit's going to get hypercharge, and there's nothing as a gem carry that you can do into a Kit most of the time. It is so hard to stop. You saw that in Brawl Cup a couple of months ago. And then you've got Kit in bounty and knockout, where people are starting to become a bit wiser to the Kit cheese, but at the same time, it's just still so hard to stop unless you have an appropriate counter. I just think Kit is so good right now, and not a lot of people talk about it. The next brawler who I believe is very underrated, so a lot of these will come with the balance changes, and eventually some of them might, you know, rise up in the meta. I think Sprout has to be one of these brawlers. So again, another brawler where I've not really seen pros go too much Sprout, but I've been seeing high win rates when they do go Sprout. So again, not saying he's anything crazy, but he's definitely a good last pick brawler again. I think he's one of these brawlers you've got to be careful of when in knockout, in bounty, in a few hot zone situations, and maybe even again like in some gem grab even down the lanes. I think Sprout is a good option, honestly. Like those two buffs that he got are very strong, and I think it's because again there's so many buffy brawlers they got to ban out, so he's kind of being slept on. But I think once those buffy brawlers are nerfed, Sprout will rise up and people will realize how strong he is. My last brawler on this video for the underrated, we have Griff. So, you know, you're thinking again here, well, Griff, you normally call overrated in the meta. Well, right now I'm saying he's underrated, and I think personally I overlooked his buff a little bit because I was so hyper fixated on all of the buffies, and Griff's buff was really, really nice. It might be this period again where this could really backfire, because with Griff, when he got buffies, everybody was using Griff. Like, I'm talking, he was top 5 usage rates in the first 3-4 days of scrims, because pros really liked his gadget buffy breaking open the map. But then they just realized, well, you open up the map, but then Griff himself isn't that good, especially with his main attack. But now they've kind of fixed that with the recent buff, so now his main attack lands a lot quicker and it's just a lot easier to hit now. So I've been seeing some good success rate with him. Not saying he's anything crazy, but you know, people are still thinking Griff's a C-tier brawler, but I think he's pretty, I'd say, in the middle of A-tier right now. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed this, my over and underrated list. Again, right now I am on vacation, so a few of these videos will be pre-recorded, so things could definitely change, but as of like 3-4 days into the meta, I think this is a good reflection. So that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.